I'm Jerry Portwood, the founder and editor of the Queer Love Project, and it's been nearly a year since we did our first QLP book club. Over that time, I've been thrilled to talk to so many talented authors about their novels and how they intersected with queer love. But I have to admit, I've been pretty disappointed that I haven't had an opportunity to talk about female bodied desire in any way, really. It's really been more male centered. So, Matt Crane is joining me today. A Sharp Endless Need is about the intensity of high school basketball and as it serves as a high stakes arena for grief, queer awakening, and the crushing weight of perfectionism. Set in a small Pennsylvania town in 2004, the novel follows a star point guard, Mack Morris, as they navigate a senior year defined by the death of their father and an all consuming obsession with their new teammate, Liv Cooper. And it is an amazing novel, Max. So I'm so happy for you to join us and to talk to us because we have a lot of questions we want to ask. So thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
So, um, well, first I just want to talk about your name because on the book it says Marisa Crane. I'm introducing you as Matt Crane. So tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, so this is real fun because the narrator's name is Mac, but spelled differently.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And everybody's like, "Oh wow, way to change it up." Because I think they thought I went by Mac first, which would make more sense. But I actually, um, it's one of those silly things where you're like, "I wish my name was da da da," and then it's like, no, actually, your name can be just something different. So I was still going by Marissa. I think when the early days of drafting this book, but I was like, I wish my name was Mac. Like I'm gonna write like sort of my not my alter ego. Like there's a lot different about this Mac, but sort of writing into a different version of myself and give them this name. Because I wish that was my name. And then I like wrote this book and was like, oh, you actually can just like name yourself. So then I was like, what if I do that? I just changed my name to Mac, and now everyone will think this book is precisely about me.
Well, that's true. I mean, so the first book I read of yours, I Keep My Exoskeletons to Myself. It's very different, speculative fiction about a queer mother grieving her wife's death while raising a child in a dystopian surveillance state. And now you have this story about uh, women's basketball in high school with a character named Max. So tell us, is there any autobiographical moments or is this all just completely, nothing?
Yeah, it comes from like an emotional truth place. A lot of the external plot elements that are not true to
Right.
life. My dad is alive. Sorry, that's not a spoiler early on. Dad suddenly dies, and they're reeling from grief and also, what so many of us do, reevaluating like a loved one through that lens. Who was this person and whatnot. And um,
You had to have played basketball because there is so much detail about basketball.
oh, yeah, yeah, yes, yes. I played in college. It was really important to me to write about basketball, but it took me a while to get there. I Early in my writing career sort of internalized these ideas from the literary world that sports weren't like didn't belong in literary fiction specifically. We have a lot of sports romances and um sports YA books, but I sort of didn't see much literary fiction that included sports. And there's still like the age old naggy ideas of like jock versus nerd or like things about how sports are not intellectual. I think those things are getting sort of disproven and more, yeah, like left behind as we go on. But I think I had some of that still lingering, like, oh, this thing was my entire life for 20 years, but I don't think I can write about it. And then I did. I was like, oh, um, there's a place for this. So yeah, I played my whole life, and some of the features of Mac are similar to me. Like I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania in the
Mhm.
um I was a D1 prospect. I felt a lot of pressure internally and externally to perform, be perfect, pick the best school, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I was really ambitious, but I was also like really struggling with a lot of the pressures. And didn't really know what to do with that, and also struggling with, being closeted and
Mhm.
figuring what that meant without knowing a single adult where I lived who was queer, or there was nobody in my school who was out. There was like one boy, who people would be like, "Oh, he's gay," because there'd be like something like that, but no one was out, and you heard the way people talked about that one person who was maybe more obviously reading as queer, and you're like, "I can't,
See,
I can't."
that's so fascinating to me because this is set in 2004. I came out in 1992, basically, and graduated from high school in 1995. I was that one gay boy who was like, "I'm out," and I was in the deep South in South Georgia.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. And so it's fascinating to me. And it's one of the reasons why I started Queer Love Project because it's just great to know that people are still on this journey. Things are still confusing. And what I loved where you have it set. So, like my first novel, which I'm still trying to sell, is set in 1999, partly because I didn't want to have to deal with cell phones. You
Yeah.
actually have a character who's sharing her cell phone with her mom.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, like, I guess that was a moment where we were like, we have one cell phone for the family or something.
Yeah, it was funny to write in that, like, precipice of technology, and obviously what I'm familiar with and what I grew up in, it's like we had AOL Instant Messenger, and that was so much like the primary way that I would communicate with a lot of people, and then we had the flip phones, and it was texting was a thing, but, nothing else. I shared a phone with my mom for until I was like a junior, and then she was so annoyed at how many texts she would get when she had the phone that she, like, was like, "Get a phone."
But
Um
it's also a great plot device for tension, right? Because you're like, "Oh, what is mom gonna end up seeing?" Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I remember us writing notes and trying to keep the notebooks and the notes from our parents, and my mom reading my diary and my notebooks I had with all my girlfriends who I would pass notes with, and that's how she found out I was gay, basically.
I yeah, I was, in the book, it's like Mack's mom sees things and just ignores them and, like, the text, and a lot of them are about the substance use, and it's just like, "No, I'm gonna be avoidant, like, I don't need to deal with this." It is very funny that I felt no stress about my mom reading my texts when I used her phone because I didn't feel like I was all my friends knew that she shared it, so, like, nobody was texting me anything wild, but they'd be like, "Hey, do you have the phone right now? Like, what are you doing?" or whatever.
I know, but I just know that teenage daughters and their moms are like, there's already so much drama that I just can't imagine.
Yeah, 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 it's wild time.
So let's talk about the basketball of it all. I actually see that like Brandon Jenkins has joined, and like there's another writer who's written about science, and that's like another of these topics. It's like you can't have nerds and that are not just writer nerds in books. And I love that this book is not about writing. It's about, I mean, it's beautiful writing, but it's about athletic people, right? And me as a gay kid in school, like I ran away from the jocks, I ran away from the sports. I did not want to change in the locker room. And you have these amazing locker room scenes, these erotic locker room scenes, these vulnerable locker room scenes. But you also have these amazing basketball moments. And one of the things that you write is that basketball is more erotic than dancing and a form of fucking without touching. And I feel that informs so much of this chemistry between Mac and Liv. And I wondered if you felt like, well, I want to talk about that specifically, but I also just wonder if you feel like that informs their sort of erotic tension and their desire and the kind of spark between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. The lens of chemistry and communication that they have is through basketball. Um, that's where they feel most comfortable. That's their safe place. Um, even as there's a really interesting paradox that I'm always thinking about is that you are highly observed when you're playing a basketball game. You have an audience, you have a crowd. Um, you're so visible, yet the container of it allows for physicality and affection to exist. You think about it, especially with male sports, like where there's so much toxic masculinity, but um, they'll like spank each other's butts, or like you see LeBron like and whoever Steph Curry. There's like pictures of them kissing each other's faces when they win. Like um, those forms of affection are normalized within like celebration. sports. Ugh.
Yeah.
Um, and if you take them out of that setting or container, like that, all of a sudden it's like, why is that guy spanking that guy, or why is that guy kissing that guy? These things are uncomfortable for us to witness. And obviously the dynamics are a bit different when it comes to women's sports. Like we know that there's just more queerness is often more acceptable, but for them, they're comfortable expressing themselves, their eroticism, their chemistry, their communication through those micro movements of joy and celebration and basketball, chest bumping, grabbing each other. Like it's just all so normalized, and that's a space that they feel comfortable to do it.
Yeah.
The second they step off the court, like they're these little baby deers, like they don't know how to communicate. They don't have the skills. Um, they have no models for those things. So they just talk around it. They dance around it. They don't have direct communication. So like that contrast was really important for me to write into. Like here, these people have this really unparalleled connection on the court, and they do have one off the court, but they cannot figure it out. And there's the push pull of those things and
But
the different. Yeah.
I'm curious though what you think. I mean, right now, obviously, we're in this amazing moment where college women basketball is huge, where WNBA is bigger than ever. But I remember in 2011, I reached out to Abby Wambach's manager to see if I could get her to come out in Out Magazine, and I thought it was just like everybody knew, right? Like she's just with her woman, but she basically said no. But then Megan Rapinoe, who shared the same manager, said she wanted to come out. So I actually got to talk to her and she came out. But I remember even then Megan explaining to me, this pressure because everyone just assumes that women in sports are lesbians, that there's all this pressure and whatever. And it feels like, I mean, these athletes are what, 17, 18 in 2004. So it's very specific of that time. And I don't know, just kind of tell me what you think about that, about this feeling of the closet that is there, but it's like, and then when they get to college, everyone's like, I mean, we're going to talk about that more, but like they go to this college and everyone's suddenly like more physical and like sexual and okay. Why do you think that is? I mean, I wanted to centered on the book, but like, tell me about all that.
Hmm. Yeah, there is a weird tension between everyone assumes they're a lesbian, but also nobody. Then people want to buck against it and be like, I see like straight women all the time in basketball, sort of being like, "I'm the straight one," or like whatever, um, a badge of honor. I don't know, but I
I mean, with Brittany Griner being so publicly out was a huge deal, right? I mean, that did a lot for people, but it's still is still a struggle.
yeah. So at the time of the book, there is not an out WNBA player. I think Cheryl Swoops came out in 2005, I think.
Right. Hmm.
Um, so they, as they're even playing, they don't have
Role
a
models.
ball models even. And it was a time where most people didn't watch the WNBA, even girls basketball players. I watched some. I was a big Houston Comets fan as a kid, and Cynthia Cooper was my favorite player, who is now something we can't talk about because she's a horrible person.
Right. But yeah, Mack is always talking about Allen Iverson, and they're always
Yeah,
talking about male basketball players.
yeah, and I've been in some interviews where people were sort of like, why are they still, couldn't this have been a chance to have them worship WNBA players? And like narratively and you know, it could have been useful, but it wasn't really true to my reality. It was internalized misogyny. Like at the time that we were playing girls basketball, we were still like, well, the WNBA isn't as good or whatever. And it's like, how do you live with that cognitive dissonance? Like my goal was to be in the WNBA when I was a kid. Um, and to be like, but I don't really watch it much. Like I did, but most of my friends, like most people I know didn't. And we were still like the men are the aspiration or the cool, also like the cool ones too, right? Allen Iverson just culturally was so cool and so revolutionary and changed a lot of things for the league. And I'm from outside Philly, so that was particularly, my dad raised me on Allen Iverson. Like this is our the Sixers is our team and AI is our dude. Um, and that felt true to write into as far as that tension of like, I'm a girls basketball player. I want to be a pro women's basketball player, but I'm still worshiping the NBA. And what does that mean? Um, it's actually really useful internal tension as well.
Well,
Uh,
I think that's a really important point, and writers have to grapple with that, right? Like, we aren't necessarily activists. We're writing for a certain narrative, a certain story, and you shouldn't have that responsibility to like. I guess whitewash isn't really the word, but like to change a reality just because you want it to be something. I do think that happens sometimes in YA lit and some other maybe middle grade and things like that, because they have a different point of view, but I think for literary fiction, like you're writing, you don't want to just make it better because that's the way some readers might want it.
yeah, I think it's the tension between like yearning for representation, but um, at what cost for like the emotional truths of the book.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I won't write into anything that has the WNBA or anything in my future. But for these characters, it didn't really make as much sense.
So I listened to the audiobook as well as read the book, and I thought Danny Martinek, the narrator, did an amazing job. And you haven't listened to it, right? So I'm gonna play you a clip, and we're gonna listen to part of it. And I felt like Danny really captures like kind of the feral joy that and the vulnerability of these characters. So this is from chapter 2, Tip Off, and it's I believe pretty close to the end. But I'm gonna just play a couple minutes, so get ready.
I don't hear anything.
You can't hear it. All right, I'll bring it up in another window. So basically, this scene is actually um, it starts with ball fake, and they're actually doing one on one. And you mentioned, or the writer, you write it as if there's always this competition when you're doing a one on one. And tell me a little bit about that dynamic when people are on the team and you have them several times playing a pickup game or doing something late at night, or also even Mack um, does these moments where Mack will be late at night just playing to get through anxiety. Tell me a
Hmm.
little bit about those moments.
Um, for the last one, growing up, that became like just shooting on my own became like sort of a form of meditation before I knew what that could possibly be. Um, it was just a way to be with myself and my thoughts and have this thing that brings me joy, that calms me and regulates me. Um, and it very much became like sort of I looking back and as I wrote this book, there was a reverence and a similarity to worship in church. Uh, I I think often about the rituals of sports as compared to sort of this religious fervor, and I'd say that like shooting alone at night is sort of like if someone went to church on their own late at night to just pray or
Right.
something. It has a similar energy, a similar hope to it too as well, and private desperation maybe. Um, Whereas then I think of like playing pickup every Sunday as like the church, the actual attending of church, things like that. I was
Mm.
never religious, but I think I was always replacing um, religion with this sort of practice and worship of basketball. Um, when it comes to one on one and team dynamics, I'm always really interested in team sports because they're there's so much conflict and love. It's like a family unit elsewhere. Some people want to start and they can't be a starter. Some people want to be the star and they cannot be a star. Um, they're craving different roles on the team, but you have to accept what role you have to play. Um, and
And they're
there,
also constantly judging each other, right? In both positive and negative ways.
yeah, and there's jealousy, there's envy, like there's betrayal. I was talking to someone about how like basketball game or a season can like mirror a Shakespearean, like a tragedy. Like we have betrayal, we have people stabbing each other in the back. But at the end of the day, all of you have to come together and try to win a game. And that tension is so interesting to me when a team can overcome those things and have chemistry and win. But so many teams can't. You can't overcome the interpersonal, the jealousy, the whatever. Nobody. Some people just can't find their roles on a team, and that happens sometimes. And it's interesting for me to think about. So when it comes to like one on one and things like that, it's like you're always trying to prove yourself, even as it's someone who's your beloved or your teammate.
I have
There's
to
like
say, you do
like
an
erotic,
amazing. You convinced me.
competition, you know,
Say it again.
like an erotic competition. Like competition becomes erotic in that way.
Mac, you convinced me because I do not like watching sports. I do not like watching basketball. I this was so delicious to be a part of. It was so foreign to me, and you get the tension there. And I'm not, as I said, I'm not a basketball fan, but you convinced me. I was like, I now think I like basketball, but maybe I only like women's basketball. I don't
I appreciate that. I've had a lot of people say like, I don't even know anything about basketball, and I was like, locked in. Um, it's nice to hear, I think, because there are some people who shy away from it. They're like, I don't even like sports, da da da. But I'm like, you could replace basketball, I think, with anything that you can lose yourself in, like a
right.
passion, right? It as much as it's its own unique thing, it also represents. Have you ever lost yourself in art or dance or whatever your passion is? When it becomes your identity, when it becomes your everything, and how you organize um, your self concept to yourself. Whole life, I was like, I am a basketball player. It was the first thing that I said. If you were like, who are you, right? And a thing that I touch on a little bit in the book, but is not as present. And some of the other things is like, who are you when you lose basketball? Like, what happens way in the future when that's not a part of your life? But Matt can't think that way, just like I couldn't really think that way. I thought basketball was forever. When I was 17, I was like, no, I don't see a future without it. Like, it is always here. It was like a willful refusal, right? Um, and when you organize your whole self concept around a thing, whether it's basketball or art or music, then it's scary to exist in the world. You could lose it so easily and at the same time not have any idea who you are.
Right. Well, let me try this again and let's see if
Like and all that.
you can hear it now.
Ball fake, but I didn't bite. What about you? I asked. Liv paused before answering, perhaps deciding whether to answer my question or defend her mother. She tried a quick cross, then between the legs, but I kept my eyes locked on Liv's belly, disciplined. I'm all she has, said Liv. Frustrated that she couldn't shake me, Liv turned around so her back was facing me. She started backing me down in the post, her ass pressed against my pelvis. I ground my hips in response to the contact, determined not to give Liv an inch. Typical defense, but this bumping and grinding, it made me feel like my blood was pumping in reverse. Waves of blood colliding at their peaks. The next step of the dance was for Liv to hunker down and push backward, forcing me to straighten long enough to knock me off balance. But just as Liv lowered herself into a deeper squat, two kids, maybe 11 or 12, stepped out of the dark with a flashlight, its beam illuminating the intimacy of this dance. Liv, as if struck by lightning, leapt a few feet away from me. She was breathing hard. I stood there, amused but also curious. What did she think we'd been caught doing?
So there you go. So that scene is early on in the novel. You have many others that are even more erotic, but I felt like this captured the sensuousness of them just playing ball together.
Mm-hmm.
And but also the fear.
Yeah.
Like, I think many of us can understand that moment when they feel like they get caught with any kind of PDA. But this is where I think Max like, we always do this. What did we do wrong? Were we not playing basketball, or were we actually making out?
Yeah. And that question of like, is basketball sex, or like, are various versions of basketball sex sort of is like revisited throughout the book.
Yeah.
Uh, and Mac is also, being willfully a little ignorant too. They're like trying to refocus the idea of what constantly like of what Liv and them are doing, like that recalibration. Like, no, this is normal. This is still normal. This is in the terrain of playing basketball. Um, so I don't get why it's off limits.
But then you do have a scene, and I want to talk about the bathtub scene because I know many of your readers are very interested in this bathtub scene.
Are
And yes, I've been told I have to talk to you about the bathtub scene. So on the court, Mac is more of the alpha, the point guard in control. And then there's a scene where Mac and Liv are in Liv's uh, house and they decide to take a bath together. And they're naked, but also emotionally naked. And it's one of those few moments where Mac allows himself to be cared for rather than having to perform. And it is an amazingly crafted scene. So I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit like how you decided what you decided to do, how long it took you to work on that scene, if you knew it always needed to be there, or somebody said, "Hey, we need this moment." Because it also ended in a rupture that I don't know if you want to reveal, but it also is a very pivotal tension moment.
Yeah, I wish all editors were like, you know what this book needs is a bathtub scene. Um, I always wanted to write this scene, even if it wasn't going to be necessary. It ended up being necessary because I made it. But I I like to think that I can. This is entering into a history of queer bath scenes. We have the talented Mr. Ripley where they get in the tub together, and it's like very erotic, even how it's shot, like close up and hands and whatever, um, and like the longing and also like tension that they capture. And then there's Saltburn, which is very different. Did you see Saltburn?
Of course.
Yeah. So, anyone watching, if they haven't seen it, it's very different, but it's like
No,
the,
that's a bit
the
different.
guy yearning for the other guy, watches him jerk off in the tub, and then he gets out and leaves and he goes and he like drinks his cum water. Um,
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
in a very devotional way too,
Yeah.
like rain. Um, and then so this is this is really going to say my age very specifically as like a millennial, but there was a singular ice bath scene in this Disney movie Stick It that I know was all over Tumblr and was very responsible for a lot of lesbian awakenings because it was a hot gymnast in her sports bra and she like gets into a ice baths because she's sore. And that was also part of the inspiration for this. So they're in their sports bras, actually. Um, but I was like, I want to enter into this canon of queer. queer
Mm,
um, and I also needed them to have an excuse to do it. So it's most things are through this lens of basketball. So they do it because they just played this really rough game and they're like all beat up. Like they're covered in bruises, they're really sore. So everything like gets again renegotiated through that lens. Like this is necessary because we need to recover in order to keep playing. And that gives them access to the thing that they're trying to reach. Otherwise, there's no access point, right?
yes.
Um, so they like do this. It's all a performance. Oh, we have to recover. We're in this ice bath, and um, yeah, it's the thing that was in my head the whole time I was writing it was like linger, like slow down. When I'm writing, I can sometimes just be writing too fast, trying
Yeah.
to get through. And I was like, this scene needs to be really slow. And I really was sort of thinking of it um, as more of a film. Like I was thinking of it visually, and I don't usually write that way. I'm usually language forward, but I was thinking more about the camera in that scene and how long the shots would be if I was filming it. And that was allowing me to like just linger, like sit deeper into the scene, slow everything down, like Liv holding an ice cube up to Max space and like running it down their body. Like all of that was like very slow and,
Hmm.
just been like long zoomed in shots. And um, yeah, it's an act of care and being cared for. And it is really vulnerable for Mack, I think, to be in that type of position, as you said, because they're usually in control, and um, psychologically, the things that it like gives you to be a point guard or a quarterback, or when we talk about sports that have sort of a commander, um, you're always giving, you're always controlling. You're not often the vulnerable one. You're sort of, I'm the leader. I'm doing this. I'm moving all my chess pieces around. Da, da, da. And to have someone turn around and turn that attention on you can be really frightening and obviously rewarding. Um,
It's also a beautiful and pivotal and heartbreaking scene because, and this took me years of therapy to understand what shame was. And I know shame is a great topic of yours, but then you have this great rupture. And I don't want to spoil it for people, but the way I understand shame now is when one is feeling vulnerable and feeling joy and feeling happiness, and then to have it ruptured, right? And to actually then feel like all of that goodness that you just felt now has been turned inward opposite, and you now feel like you shouldn't have felt that way. And so you do a really good job of doing that. And I don't want to spoil it for people, but if you haven't read it, and that's why I'm not even playing the audio for this part, because I really feel like everybody needs to read this scene. It should be taught in school. Obviously it won't be, because then your book will be banned, but then more people will buy it. So so anyway, I just want to say it's a really, really gorgeous and really well written, amazing craft moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So now to turn to another scene is Mac then ends up finding another desire interest, let's say,
Yeah.
with Danny, who's on another team. And then you write a really intense first sex scene in a way,
Mhm.
first orgasm scene, all these things. So tell me a little bit about um, crafting Danny, why Danny needed to be there, and also whether this is about a romantic connection or is it a way of Matt kind of using physical pleasure as like a self-soothing or another way of numbing her pain or their pain.
Yeah. Danny is a foil for Liv. Um, Here's a person who is out-ish and like pretty bold, and also in comparison to Mac and Liv, like seems really self-assured with like what
Yeah.
she's also a foil, um, basketball and ambition wise. She's a great player, but she doesn't care about playing in college, and that's really foreign to our other two.
Yeah.
And some of that is what I wanted Mac to confront. So, just craft wise, narrative wise, I needed Mac to talk to someone who can offer a different perspective and like rock Mac's world. Like they're like, wait, it's possible to just like something, as opposed to being obsessed like pathologically and throwing yourself into it. And it's possible to just be like, I like basketball, it's fine, it's fun.
But I'm going to go and be academic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So she offers this foil and different
Danny
different.
also sees Matt. Danny says, I see you, right? Like I can read you.
Yeah. Um and so much of the book is Mac and Liv doing this push and pull, and some of the rupture that they experience, and also some of the frustration that Mac has around like Liv's mom is overbearing, religious, super misogynistic, has ideas about like femininity and how Liv is presenting to the world. And obviously Liv is like very crushed under those expectations. And we know that Mac understands it, but Mac, I think, still reaches like sort of a breaking point or just like a frustration point of like, this is a person I want. And like, I feel like it's not going to happen. And this other girl is like hitting on me, and um let me just like go over there and see what happens there. And I didn't think of it as a romantic connection. I thought of it more as escapism for
Yeah.
sure. um Escapism paired with like some curiosity. Like up till this point she's never, or they've never hooked up with a girl. um they lost their virginity to this stupid Trevor guy, and it was like horrible.
Boring.
Yeah, some of it's the curiosity too. Like, what is this like to enact a desire, actually have it happen? Like, do I like girls this way? What is this going to feel like? Is it going to feel different than what I hope it would feel like with Liv? Is it going to be exciting? Is it going to be disappointing? Is it going to be all of that? So I think there's like a healthy part of curiosity to it, but also escapism and using Danny a bit as far as that escapism. So
It's also, though, a good reminder. I remember in Susan Sontag's journal, she talks about the first orgasm she had and how that totally changed her worldview, because before she was like, I have this drive and I'm going to be this thing. I'm a brain. And then suddenly she's like, oh, I'm a body. And as a boy, I remember that. I mean, the first time I had sex with another guy and I had a certain trajectory and it's suddenly I was like, oh, but now it's a little bit more complicated because I need this, right? And I think that Mac is a little confused as well, because it's like, I have a trajectory, but
yeah,
now I also have another desire that's not just basketball, but I can't let this get in the way. And that's a
yeah,
really interesting adolescent discovery.
yeah. And it's like it's funny to think like I have a body. Like it's Mac for Mac, it's like they know they have a body, but only for basketball.
Yeah.
Most there's some like gender dysphoria and stuff we can talk about, but for the most part, they view their body as like how it can serve them on the basketball court. Oh my god, sorry, my pit bull is yelping.
No worries.
The 100-pound pit bull who's always sobbing and crying like a
The
baby.
dog will not be ignored.
Like, yeah, they're always like, how can my body help me win this game, score all these points? And, that frees you up for your body to betray you in all kinds of ways if you're putting that type of pressure on, like what it can do. And we also see even early on, like their sort of knee problems and things that they're pushing through. And then Liv hurting her ankle and like her pushing through those things. We see these early experiences of how much athletes are willing to only think about their goals so much that they're going to sacrifice this body that they have. So it's interesting to think about maybe the dynamic of Mac being like, my body can do other things, or like is useful for other things, or like what sort of joy and pleasure can my body experience that isn't connected to a sport. And I think that's like really uncharted territory. And it's not so much what your body can do for you, it's like how your body can connect with another person or yeah.
Well, I want to talk about that because one of the things that Mac is doing is grappling with their body as an object of someone else's desire. And I want to play a clip again because there's this moment that you have the two high school students go visit a college. And I remember that experience of doing that as well. And this one is very different and I thought really, really revealing. And so this comes in, it's chapter 14, Step Back Jumper for anybody who's looking along with the book. And so I'm going to start that here.
Both looked down at our sweats and blushed at each other. Simone herded us into her room, duffel bags in tow, and shut the door behind us. We began to change into something a little more appropriate for a college party. Some bootcut jeans and tops from Forever 21 laid out on Simone's bed. I pulled off my sports bra and turned away from Liv to face the full-length mirror. I was wearing burgundy boxer briefs that I thought accentuated my ass and hamstrings. It was only my third time wearing boxer briefs, but I felt powerful in them. Glass slipper type fit. It had been worth the weirdness of having to check out with the older female cashier who said, "How nice of you to go shopping for your brother." I watched Liv watch me in the mirror when she thought I wasn't looking. Her eyes peeled my boxer briefs off. Her mouth formed a tight O. I pretended not to notice her gaze and crossed my arms over my chest, hands tucked under my armpits so my small boobs, my pecs, were completely covered, compressed. The way my arms were crossed made my biceps look bigger, my shoulders more defined. I tilted my head to the side, chin up, and examined myself in the mirror. Everything about me right then screamed masculine. I felt like a heartthrob posing for a magazine cover. How could Liv not want me now? What do you think? I said, meeting Liv's eyes in the mirror. Liv choked on her spit before answering. About what exactly? She rubbed the back of her neck. How do I look? Do I look like a boy? Do you want to look like a boy? I don't know, I said, tilting my head to the other side, readjusting my hands under my armpits. I think I just want to look like a not girl. I could tell the words were on her lips. She was so close to giving me what I wanted. An indulgence, a fantasy, a made-up world where we could be something. Then she pulled on her jeans and her little femi top, and she was out the door.
So, wow, that is great. Tell us a little bit about that scene and why you felt it was so pivotal.
Yeah, so I'm non-binary. I had some sort of similar feelings in high school without any language for it. And that was important to me to do in the book, as far as not like we're talking about, like not back editing or like changing something like that to be like I am non-binary, or like have these things be named. I think there's also something in the not naming that's really interesting to me. What we reach for in the lack of labels or known language. What's happening in this scene? It's so much of Mack is sort of like don't perceive me, but then perceive me, the age old thing. Um, what Mack is asking for is live to see past the obvious reality of Mack. Like they mostly look like a girl, but to that seeing that so much of the book is about, like I see you, I want to be seen. um Mack is asking Liv to see past what's obvious and to see into an alternative, um a world where they can see sort of the soul of them and what they really want to feel like, and it's a they're asking for a gift, and it's a gift that Liv won't give.
Yeah.
And so much of the book to me was craft-wise sort of balancing major tragedies with tiny tragedies. This like ebb and flow. So we have like that we have the big narrative arc of sort of what's going on with them, and their relationship and basketball and where they're going to go to college and how they're going to escape, and that's sort of this big thing. But along the way, there's sort of these small joys and tragedies that are like small waves going throughout. And to me, this was sort of a small heartbreak, a small tragedy, like a moment that is existing on a threshold, and it could go one way or another. And we're sitting in it and we're waiting for it, and Liv, won't tip us over. Um,
But
and
also,
it,
when you're 17, those minor tragedies feel like major tragedies as well.
well, exactly. You can't see anything else. Everything is a big deal. And that's one of the tragedies of adolescence, is that you don't have that gauge often. There's been a real true tragedy, like the dad has died, and that's something that's coloring the entire book. And Mac is looking for a parental figure who their mom is very absent in her grief. And Mac is reaching for the coach as a sort of replacement dad. So we see all of that also just at
There's
play.
there's also a sexual assault that also doesn't totally irrevocably wreck Mac's life, but it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. There's major tragedies, but it's almost like Max still feels the small tragedies just as much.
Yeah.
Um, there's no sort of gradient of them; like they all just feel huge, and that feels really true to my experience at coming of age. What I was gonna say before? Oh, Mac is asking Liv for this gift of whatever gives me this sight, give me this knowing of my gender or seeing beyond it. Um, And it was important for me that Liv didn't, because like Mac needs to eventually be able to gift themselves that self permission is so important. And obviously it's beautiful to be seen by other people, and they do have so many beautiful moments together of seeing each other, but um that self permission is so key.
Yeah.
um Back to dig in later, like I can give this to myself, I can see myself in this way, and I can demand it of the world and demand it of others. And they're only 17, so it's going to take a while, but I think it was necessary to happen there.
I love what you said though about not having the language but still wanting to have the scene. And I will say that, I said like I'm a generation before. In 1994, I remember a close friend who now identifies as non-binary. At the time, I remember when they first got their pair of boxer briefs. Like I remember us going to Kmart and getting the 3-pack of Hanes boxer briefs that I was wearing, but they also and they just felt so empowered by wearing this underwear, right? That underwear can be such an important part of us. It's so close to us, but it also helps us figure out our identity. And you capture that with the boxer briefs.
Yeah, even if no one sees it, like
Yeah.
even if no, like yeah, it's so private, but it can change how you like move through the
Yeah.
world. Having it as a secret like feels very apt, like, oh, no one knows I'm wearing this underwear that they would all have something to say about or something.
Definitely. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is the way that Mack engages with substance abuse and alcohol. And I felt that was really fascinating because we get so many narratives centered around gay men and men in general that deal with these topics. But I really have not experienced many narratives that are centered around, women or non-binary people dealing with substance abuse and what they're doing with self-medication and dealing with, why they're doing these things. So you really dealt with that in a really important way, and it's a difficult topic. So tell us how you cracked that one.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about because a lot of people don't like it. Like its inclusion and portrayal. Um, but it was true to my life, and it, I also wanted to reveal so much of what athletes are going through. Like there's a million reasons that Mac is using substances in this book, like internalized homophobia, transphobia, loneliness, alienation, grief, and the pressures of athletic performance. I mean, who wouldn't fold under these certain things? But what's important to me, like setting wise, culturally, like they're in this small town in Pennsylvania where substance use is super normalized. It's the go-to coping mechanism for any sort of unwanted feeling. It's an inheritance of setting of um, your culture. They don't know what therapy is. They don't. That's not something that's talked about. Not even allowed to say the word depression, anxiety. Those things that they were so stigmatized for me growing up. Um, and I was raised on the idea that, like, if you needed therapy, you were, like,
Broken.
really you were really fucked up. Like, you could
Mhm.
never go to therapy if you had some issues or some things you wanted to talk about or shame as we've talked about. Like, you had to be like, you're irreparable. Like, there are some things you are not functioning anywhere. You don't barely belong in society. Like, such extreme ideas, um, that it was terrifying. But it was completely normal to go binge drink, go smoke weed, do coke.
Mhm.
Um, I was doing ecstasy back when we called it that, before it was Molly and various things. And that was not at odds with my athletic ambition. And a lot of people who don't like it in the book are like, I don't believe that these D1 prospects would do so many substances. And I'm like, I don't care if you don't believe it because it's the reality. Um,
Yeah, it's supposed to be that they're clean and they're good.
yeah, there's like the idea of athletes, yeah, being really clean cut, I feel like is like the terminology that I used to hear. And obviously this isn't true of all athletes, but there is so much research about the higher rates of addiction and substance use with athletes, even, Olympians, pro athletes.
Well, it's because you feel untouchable, or you feel like you're not going to hurt yourself. Also,
Yeah, I also think there's like remedy of like personality. sometimes when you get so obsessed with your sport and you're so hyper focused, like in every direction, things feel extreme or like intense. I've talked to a lot of athletes about this. But they're like, yeah, I approach substance use like with the same fervor that I approach like my sport. Like there's almost like no difference.
Like, I'm going to
Because
be a really good stoner. This is good.
but it was like drinking felt competitive, right? You obviously have the drinking games, but even when I was in college, it was like our team was like taking this drinking very seriously. Like we have to win the drinking. Um, you know? So yeah, I it would have felt so dishonest to not include that part of Mack's journey for sure. Especially when thinking about the reality of my adolescence and the only tool that I could turn to. It was the only thing that I knew, and it was super normalized and it wasn't stigmatized at all. Everyone was like, "Yes, do substances."
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
I
Um,
I have a last question. I want to know, any of the guests who've joined us, if you have any, you can leave them in chat. Let Mac know if you're a fan or if you want to know. We're going to talk more about the next books as well. But before we wrap things up, I had a last question. And I don't want to give away too much because I do want people who haven't read the book to, I I am impervious to spoilers, but I know that some people get upset. So I just want to say, you conclude the novel on this very vague, open-ended note. And I wonder, do you view the ending as a hopeful step toward Mac finding an identity beyond basketball, or is it a heartbreaking loss of the one thing that they felt good at? Does that give away too much? I don't know. I don't think it does.
it's both.
Yeah.
That has the answer, because so much of hope comes from an ending of something else, or grief and hope often for me are so intertwined.
Yeah.
Eh, it was so hard to land the end in the moment. I kept writing past it.
Yeah.
I had a extra chapter that like jumped into the future. Um, but like I didn't, I wanted people to be able to interpret it. I have cynics being like, oh, it's a heartbreaking ending. And I have like optimists being like, no, no, I believe in XYZ. And,
Well, as
uh,
an optimist, I like the ending as
but I think like the note it lands on it feels hopeful. And there are different like futures for Mac that I think you can interpret through the ending, and none are more correct or than the others. But um, I think the complex note of the hope and the heartache is really necessary for me as a landing place for the book.
I think it's great to hear another successful writer explain the ending is so hard. And as an editor, I often also struggle with writers and their endings because we often write too long. I often say either get rid of the last two paragraphs or the last two pages or the last two chapters.
Yeah.
But as a writer, I also need somebody outside to tell me to do that. Did you have anyone who was your reader who said, "Oh no, we don't need to go into the future, end it here," or go back to?
Yeah. Yeah, my agent Maggie, who we know, Maggie was like, "Nah, nah, I don't think we need this." It was I'm not a very happy endings person, and it was my attempt at a happy ending. Like I went like much too explicitly. It was very tidy and tied up, and like we all come together and happy. And Maggie was like, "This isn't really you." Da da da. Da. And I was like, "No, it's not." It was like my attempt at this sort of thing. Um, but I don't love tidy endings like at all. All the books that I read, I like when they land in ambivalence,
Yeah.
or like in scene. Um, so it was much truer to myself to try to
You
write.
like the gut punch. You like,
Yeah, and I like to sit in nuance. I
yeah,
think I don't want something spoon fed to me of like here's how it ended. I want to end in something that makes me think well beyond the book.
yeah. Well, so speaking of that, your next book, which is a collection of essays, is out this summer, Perverts, which is a very gay title.
Stories.
Stories, yeah, sorry. And one of the ways in the book copy, this is all I know about it, it is described as a provocative and uproarious collection about pleasure, performance, and pain. It's an exaltation of the awesome depravity of queer modernity, which is a pretty amazing sentence. So whoever wrote that, kudos to you.
Yeah, yeah. My editor and my assistant and the assistant. And full frontal confrontation is like one of the
Yep.
lines.
Yep.
Uh,
How we perform desire and shame.
yeah. No, it's awesome copy.
I was like, this is a collection I need.
I'm like, here's the book, but like, good luck distilling it into something. And they did a great job.
And some of these are speculative as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them are sort of in a speculative territory. Sometimes I like to call it like exaggerated reality. If it's not quite so, like my first book, I keep my exoskeletons to myself. It has such an obvious speculative quality. People who don't know it, it's instead of prisons, wrongdoers, which is a charged term in the world, they get given an extra shadow. It's a mark of shame, a la the Scarlet Letter, sort of. It's an obvious speculative element, right? It can exist. But some of the stories in Pervert sort of play with that between territory of this is something that could exist, but it feels maybe exaggerated or elevated. And some of the stories are satirical for sure. Um, George Saunders is a big inspiration for me. Um, the ways that he writes into like labor and performance, especially in 10th of December, um, was pretty foundational for this book.
So now we're going to get somebody who's going to describe you as the queer George Saunders.
That isn't a blurb.
Oh.
Andrea Lawler blurbed it and said it, and now I can't unknow it. It's yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
not call myself that ever. That would be really disgusting.
Right. How is it though? I mean, I know you have other projects in the works that you're hoping to publish soon, and you are going between sort of like realism and this, as you said, exaggerated realism. Is it possible to do that? Is it difficult?
I love it. I early in my career, when talking to Maggie, my agent, like we had exoskeletons come out, speculative, and I'm like, my next book's going to be this queer coming of age basketball novel. She's like, right on. I really appreciate her openness to like sort of my impulses. But I like to whatever is stuck in my head and won't leave and is obsessing me is like what I need to write next. Like I don't really get a say in the matter because my brain won't leave me alone about it. But I love shifting genres and combining genres and busting genres. It's so fun. I never know what I'm going to write next really until the idea is irritating me, keeping me up. But I like it. I like so much of the industry right now is sort of like everyone needs to fall in their niche or in their genre and write predictably. Oh, all your fans love your, dystopian or whatever. When's your next dystopian? And that was so hard for me too, to be like, I don't want to set an expectation that I'm only going to write dystopian speculative. Like I will always return to it, I think, forever. But I want the freedom to play. I want to write in as many genres as I want. And hopefully the industry will have me in that way.
I hope they do too, because I have to say, this has been an amazing conversation. I've been avoiding a certain story, and I think this conversation, I'm going to keep thinking about it. I'm going to keep thinking about a sharp and listening. It's all in my head, and you're influencing me, and I really appreciate all the work that you put into your writing.
Nice. I love that.
So, is there anything else you want to share with your readers, your fans? Anything that you want to tell us?
Is this about what I'm working on next?
You can.
Oh, yeah, I am. See, like I said, I'm always going to return to dystopian. I'm working on a trans superheroes dystopian novel. And I'm also working on a revenge novel.
Nice. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mack. And I'll have a lot of the links and things and the notes for this episode, but this has been incredible. Thank you for being generous with your time and talking to us about Sharpen the Seas. It's actually out in paperback now as well. This is the paperback cover.
And it has a interview in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Book club questions. So it has some cool added stuff.
Yeah. So however you're going to get it, this is a book that you definitely don't want to miss. And as a gay man, I have to say, I learned a lot. Just as all these people are learning about gay sex from heated rivalry, you will learn a lot about sapphic love and desire from this book. So it's really, really special. And I think it should be part of the canon. So it will be.
Thank you, Jerry.
So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.